Earlier in the week, there was from the Arizona Republic, Mark Bartelstein, the agent for Bradley Beal, came out on the record for the second time about this Bradley Beal stuff. And Bartelstein came out and said, the reports that are out there are created out of thin air. And that was about Beal lifting his no-trade clause for, these are the teams mentioned, the Bucks, the Nuggets, the Heat, or the Lakers. Now, I find that pretty interesting that those are the teams mentioned because you did not hear the Chicago Bulls, the Detroit Pistons, those two teams, particularly the Bulls. The Bulls are interesting because The Athletic, the same day, reported in a group post that the Bucks' goals are to cut enough salary to get under the second apron, which would allow them to trade enough salaries to aggregate together. And the goal is to get perhaps Beal or a star like Chicago's Zach LaVine. Now, that's interesting to me, Tom, because a few weeks ago, when this Butler stuff was still in the early days, it might have even been a month ago for that matter, one source said to me, one of the primary hopes for Phoenix getting rid of Beal is Chicago. And I had heard nothing about that since then. Zero, nothing. Nobody mentioned Chicago as a destination for Beal. So I just kind of, filed it away like, okay, this might be nothing. It might be total BS. But it's just interesting that this comes up now as we approach the deadline that the Bucks could be going after Zach LaVine. Now, there's a deal to be done there. I was on Bill Simmons' podcast on Wednesday night. I laid this out to Bill. The deal could be something like this, Tom, where you see the Bucks get LaVine, the Suns get Butler, the Bulls get Beal, the Heat get Khris Middleton and Pat Connaughton, and then the Pistons or some other team could take on Bobby Portis. And that works financially. Then you would spread out some picks amongst those teams that deserve them. Like I think, Bulls would get something for taking Beal instead of LaVine. I'm sure the Heat would want something in there as well. But a deal like that just feels like it makes sense. It just makes sense to everybody for that matter. Heat get rid of Butler. Bucks upgrade from Middleton with his bad ankles to LaVine. Pistons get a versatile center for their front court rotation in Portis. Suns get Butler. I think there's something there. I really do when you're connecting all the dots.
LaVine's good, man. He's really
awesome.
good. Under the radar. A guy who I was just running the numbers here a second ago. Shaedon Sharpe has made a three-pointer in each of his last 23 games. And a big reason why is because his pull-up game has improved by so much. He's shooting 40% on pull-up threes during that streak. The number one guy in pull-up threes this year, or at least since December 1st, is Zach LaVine, and it's by a mile. 47% since December 1st. Almost 50% of his threes going in off the bounce. That is so big for a guy who's that athletic, a guy who's that smooth, a guy who is that big and is someone that like the Warriors could absolutely use a Zach LaVine. Then you're like, wait, how many teams wouldn't use a Zach LaVine when he's scoring this well, 3-level scorer, exciting player who's got a couple more years on his contract, which a couple years ago looked like an albatross, like a terrible deal. But as we're seeing the cap spike here in the next 4 or 5 years, you're looking at Zach LaVine's deal and being like, wait a minute, is that such a bad deal? And if you're trying to win, that's what stars go for these days. And Zach LaVine is absolutely playing like a star. And next is Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. He would be a huge upgrade over a guy, Khris Middleton. I love what he's done over his career, Kev. But if you can't move, if both your ankles are shot, they got to make a move fast. And Zach LaVine would be an amazing coup for them.
Now, if the Bulls were to indeed have a willingness to take on Bradley Beal, and the reason why they might is because Billy Donovan was his college coach at Florida. They could reunite together. Maybe Beal, he restores some of his value, and then the Bulls could flip him at some point towards the end of his contract. Or maybe they keep him. Maybe he just gets better. But for Chicago, you would get picks. If you're Phoenix, I said this to Bill, and he agreed with me. I'm not sure you will agree with me. I said I'd rather have LaVine than Butler if I'm the Phoenix Suns. Do you agree with that statement?
No, I don't. Just the same problem we had with Bradley Beal is the duplicitous role, the skill set of Kevin Durant. Devin Booker and Zach LaVine. To me, I need an intense playoff raiser. That's Jimmy Butler. Over the last 6 years, Jimmy Butler has the second highest win shares of any player in the last 6 postseasons. The only guy who's better is Nikola Jokic. The guy raises his play in the postseason in a way that we need from a team that has Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, 2 guys that just got swept last year and are on the verge of being in the play-in. I want Jimmy Butler's attitude, penetration, the ability to score in the mid-range. I know the three-point shot isn't there in the regular season, but in the postseason, he shows an ability to step back from 3 and hit it at a high percentage. And defensively, if he doesn't have to be the number 1 guy on your offense, I think he is a lot more able and capable and has the disposition to guard the opposing best player and be that hound and create turnovers on the defensive end. Is Zach LaVine, Bradley Beal that guy? I don't think so. For me, the two-way upside and just the leadership, I know it's weird to say leadership, but this guy did carry that Miami Heat team to 2 finals trips. I do think that kind of asset, that skills of Jimmy Butler on and off the floor, it's just a better fit to me with Phoenix than Zach LaVine.
Yeah, he's so old though. That's where I have concerns. I mean, I know you're old as is with KD, and there's a an end of the road with him at some point. LaVine's still only 29, turns 30 in March. He's younger, just an elite shooter. 45% from 3 on catch and shoots the last 4 of the last 5 years, 37% from 3 on dribble jumpers last 4 or 5 years. Like, these are elite marks for a guy. Great mid-range shooter, great at-rim finisher, lob guy. But to your point, he does not bring the defense in the way Jimmy Butler can. He does not bring the downhill rim penetration, foul drawing that Jimmy Butler does, and that's something that they're missing. Like, Butler does fill more of those what the Suns are missing gaps. LaVine is just kind of like what you wish Bradley Beal was, right? Like that, that's what I view him as. But ultimately, a lot to shake out with that situation in the coming weeks. Who knows when that shoe actually drops? Maybe it'll happen randomly and we'll do an emergency podcast. To our YouTube audience, give this video a thumbs up.